Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for a live television first as we attempt to commune with the devil.
Hey everybody, Lindsay here, and this is my review for Late Night with the Devil. The devil. I was very excited to see this movie. When I saw the trailer for it, I was like, holy shit, this has so much stuff in it that is right up my alley. It's got the 70s vibe, it's got the late night talk show stuff, it's got horror, possession, the devil, and David Dalmatian. So I was very, very excited to see this. I only watched the teaser trailer before going in, but I was very excited. And I was surprised that my local theater was actually showing it, because I mean, we'll get every single PureFlix entertainment option that comes down the line, but Late Night with the Devil, that was a surprise. So I didn't have to drive 4 hours round trip to see this thing either. But first I'm gonna talk about what I did like, and then I'll talk about what I didn't like. And the didn't like stuff will be in the spoiler section, just so you know. So let's start with what I did like. The best thing that this movie does is how well it recreates a late night talk show in the 70s, very Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. It recreates that vibe and that look extremely well, and David Dalmatian does a really good job of playing that late night host type of role. And not just the look and the feel and the timing of the show, they also did a great job of having guests on that were very much archetypes of guests from those late night shows back in the 70s. Because they would have kind of odd guests. It wasn't just celebrities or music stars. They would have mentalists on and people who purported to have psychic abilities. There was a guy who was a skeptic, like in the movie, who offered $10,000 if they could prove that they had actual psychic abilities, and that guy's name was James Randi. He was very famous for being a skeptic. He busted many mediums and psychics and mentalists throughout his years, and he was kind of a regular on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. One of the more famous opponents he had was this mentalist called Uri Geller. Uri Geller would do things like move stuff with his mind, or he'd bend spoons. So James Randi created like a controlled environment on The Tonight Show. Like James Randi brought in his own items for Uri Geller to move and manipulate.
Would you welcome, please, Uri Geller. Nice to see you.
Thanks.
We have only met...
This scares me.
This scares you? Well, this is we just got some things together here, and as I said, as you progress and do what you want to do tonight, well,
right,
you can tell us what you would like to try, and we'll leave it up to you.
I'll try when I'll really feel up to it, okay?
And what do you know? He couldn't do it. And there was a lot of excuses about interference and bad energy. And he also did this with another guy that you could tell that they patterned the mentalist in this movie on, especially the way he dressed and his hair and stuff like that. I think his last name was Drydick or something like that. I'll have to look it up, but I'll put it in here. And he would do this thing where he would make a page in a telephone book. For you, those of you who don't remember, a telephone book was this giant book that they would bring you every year, and it had every single person's phone number in it and their address. And they just give it away. Everybody's information. They would dox everybody. But he would make the page of a telephone book, which are very thin pages. He would make it move and flip the page without touching it. Well, James Randi came out and he sprinkled some confetti all around this phone book. And of course, because he realized that this guy was just using his breath in a very controlled and pointed manner to make the page move. So when he put that confetti down, it's like, well, if this guy blows on it, it's gonna move the confetti as well. And wouldn't you know it, that guy just could not move the telephone book page. There was so much interference and bad energy and weird energy that was blocking him. The lights were a factor, if I remember correctly.
The styrofoam and the lights form electricity which pulls the page. Look. the static is going to still be here because of the foam.
But they did such a good job of recreating that dynamic on this show. Because James Randi used to be a magician, and he spent his life just busting these fakes. And he did a good job of it. He wasn't as much of an asshole as the guy in this movie, but they do a good job. I mean, he even looks like him too.
James has not won the $10,000 with this demonstration.
So it seems.
Now, you have heard what James's explanation is. Do you have any comment to make on that?
Bob, the comment very briefly is that I have gone through many hundreds of these tests with many hundreds of people who claim to have psychic powers. And quite frankly, it's more or less the same story every time. When a simple, direct, very uncomplicated protocol is used and the control is applied, the psychic forces don't seem to be present, if indeed they are ever present at all.
So I have to give them kudos for the look and the feel and getting those aspects of late night 70s talk show extremely right. They did a really good job on that. They really did their homework. So the whole actual show aspect of the movie I thought was brilliant. I thought it was perfect. I loved it. But now we're gonna get into the stuff that I didn't like. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want any spoilers, skip to this time code.
What you're about to see
You okay, Jack?
is profoundly disturbing.
All right. Now this movie is kind of split up into 3 or 4 sections. It opens in like this documentary style. I mean, it is narrated by Michael Ironside, but but it sets up a lot of the backstory about David Dastalmation's character, that this broadcast that we're going to be watching was during Sweeps Week. This broadcast was his make it or break it moment. If he didn't get those Nielsen numbers, then it was gonna be the end of the show. He had to get as big of audience as possible. And it tells a little more about like the death of his wife and his rumored association with a secret society that may or may not actually be a thing. Allegedly. And then it says the footage you're about to see is the raw, unaltered tapes of that night's broadcast mixed in with some behind-the-scenes footage. And it's the behind-the-scenes footage that I really have an issue with, because it really, really took me out of the movie and out of the spell of this 70s late-night talk show, because they would break for whatever reason, a commercial, or they had to set up the next segment, and the characters would go backstage and the aspect ratio would change. The image looked very clear. It was in black and white, but it looked very clear. And these characters are having these very personal conversations where they're very intense and close together, and they're kind of looking around to make sure no one's listening to them. But there's a guy standing next to them with a giant camera recording everything they're saying and doing. So it just seems very incongruous, and it weighs down the movie a bit when we have to take a break from the talk show. And you could still have those conversations and that exposition in the film, because just keep it on the TV show cameras. Because even though they're breaking for a commercial or for a next setup, they're moving the camera, it's still on. You could have people just come down and break away and off into a corner, and maybe you just see part of their body, but you can still hear what they're saying. It would keep you in the environment of that show, because the behind the scenes footage really, really breaks the spell. At least for me it did. And also, with that break, the ending of the movie, the aspect ratio grows wide. We get this much clearer picture. It's not a 70s talk show anymore. It's obviously this hallucination or whatever he's going through. And if we didn't have those cuts to the behind the scenes footage sprinkled throughout the movie, that reveal and that change would have been so much bigger and have such a bigger impact. But because we had these behind the scenes moments that were shot the way that they were, it doesn't land as hard as it should have.
Now, here's Mr. Midnight, Jack Darrow. Oh, good evening, Night Owls.
So overall, those are my critiques on the movie. Those were the two things that, and really those were just storytelling elements, the way the story was told, and it just seemed very incongruous to what they were doing, because they did the show part so well, and I wish it was just that, because it was done that well. So did you see Late Night with the Devil? What did you think? Let me know, put it in the comments. Do you remember on Johnny Carson when he would have James Randi and some mentalists come on and they would battle it out? Because Carson was a big Magic fan as well. He loved all that shit. That is gonna do it for this little review. So until next time, this is Lindsay signing off. I'll check you later.